Alright, so the granddaddy of them all, the quadratic formula. We want to solve using the quadratic formula. And it becomes kind of this big crazy thing, you know, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And it seems like this crazy formula, but we know how to get a, b, and c. And if we know the formula, all we have to do is plug our numbers in and our answers come up. We want to remember that this is a quadratic equation. I know it's a quadratic equation because I have a 2. Whereas this is a formula. This helps me find the answers to this. My first step, as always, is to take my equation and get it into standard polynomial form, otherwise known as general polynomial form. So we know in general form that all our x's are on one side, all our constants are on one side, and on the other is our y, or our f of x. So I'm going to start out by going plus x and minus 3. You'll notice that I line up whichever term it is like with. So I take the negative 3 and I put it under the negative 2 because they're like terms. Same with my x's. This is going to give me y equals 2x squared plus 8. Oh, guess my adding skills are off today. Plus 9x minus 5. Now, one of the indications that I want to use the quadratic formula, and not something like completing the square or square root. I know I'm not going to use solve by square root because I have a b. I'm not going to use completing the square because b is an odd number, and that always throws things off. You can do it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. Completing the square is also difficult when a does not equal 1. I could look at the factoring. And in fact, this one would factor, so it's a good way to check that to make sure that we get the same answers here using this formula as factoring. Okay? So let's take a look at how we use this right here. We practiced a lot identifying A, B, and C. And you'll note that you're going to need A, B, and C throughout this formula. Well, my A here is my lead coefficient, which is 2. B is 9, and C is negative 5. The place that catches most people is they want to call this a just 5. We have to remember the sign goes with it. We also want to remember that A, B, and C are coefficients, so this would not be 2x squared, it's just 2. At this point, I'm going to take my numbers and I'm going to substitute them in to my quadratic formula. So I'm going to have x equals negative. Here's a b, and I'm going to say 9, plus or minus the square root of 9 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 5. Let's just put a line here so we don't get confused. All of this divided by 2 times 2. Now you'll notice I use parentheses every time I substitute something in. This is going to help me especially right here. The most common error is if B is a negative, people will do negative something squared and get a negative. This is especially helpful when you're trying to use your calculator. Alright, so my next step is to say x equals, and we're just going to start simplifying, negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 9 squared is 81. I've got a negative and a negative, which makes it positive, so negative 4 times negative 5 is 20, times 2 is 40, so this becomes plus 40 over 4. we know that this number here, 81 plus 40 becomes, let's just cross it out and put 121. My next step is to say x equals negative 9 plus or minus. Well, the square root of 121 we know is 11 over 4. We're going to take this, we're going to bring it back up here. You're going to get negative 9. X equals either negative 9 plus 11 over 4, or x equals negative 9 minus 11 over 4. So, now we just have one last little, or 1.5 little steps left. Negative 9 plus 11, that's going to be 2 over 4. Negative 9 minus 11 becomes negative 20. Over 4. And now we just simplify our fractions. X equals 1/2, or x equals, well, negative 20 divided by 4 is negative 5. This is how you solve using the quadratic formula. What this means is if I took 1/2 and I put it into this standard form of this equation, that this side would equal 0. Or, if I put negative 5 in here, it's going to equal out to, or it's going to simplify down to 0. These are my two zeros, my solutions, my x-intercepts. I do know that I should end up with 2 every time I have a quadratic function. This right here indicates how many solutions you will have.